Hi, this is Rick Powers coming to you from my home office for Western Technical College Math with Business Applications, week number 11. Now, what we have going on this week is an introduction to the last part, really, of the course, which has to do with interest. And it's really a very weighty topic for me personally because of experiences I've had in the past with loans and credit, which were bad experiences. And as I've looked at this and as I've taught this, what I've seen is that it is really true that money and time are connected with the idea of two ideas: loans and investments. And they're two sides of the same thing. If you are getting a loan from some source, then they are actually investing in you. And if you are investing in something, you are actually lending your money out to something, and then you get a return on it. Now, as it turns out, we do this all the time because if you're here, you're investing your time in an education, and you're expecting to receive a return that's going to be greater, okay? But by investing your time and your money in the process of getting an education, then you are taking something you could put somewhere else and you're putting it over here instead, and then that will result in the future having a higher value. And as it turns out, that works for a lot of people, and so a lot of people invest in their education, and they want to improve and become better. And certainly investing in yourself generally makes sense. That you would work on personal development, become a better person in some way, and then that will have rewards down the road. Not always easy to delay your gratification, to say, I'm not going to do what I want to right now. I'm going to do something that will allow me to do what I want to later. But part of that then has to do with investing and loans, and then there's mathematics involved. Actually, the idea of getting a short or a simple interest loan turns out to be a big deal. That you can use what's called leverage, that you can take a small amount of money and you can leverage it to get a larger amount. You can get a loan. Well, let's just say if you're in a business, you can get a loan for $100,000. You could buy a bunch of t-shirts, sell them at a profit, and get more money than what the loan would cost you. So you can pay back the loan plus the interest, but you have more money than you would otherwise. So it's a way for people to use money to make money. As it turns out, this creates a problem in our society. If people start without money, it's hard for them to make money, because you need money to make money in many business situations. And so there's a lot going on here. We're not going to deal with all the sociology and economics of it necessarily, but we are going to deal with the mathematics of it. And hopefully that'll get you at least into that idea. And we're going to start with simple interest. Then we will move on into compound interest and amortization, mortgages and loans of various kinds. But there's kind of a complicated issue here, which is called partial payment. If you have a simple interest loan, but you only pay part of it, then there's a process to go through, which is relatively complicated. And I have a video out there that explains it. But you'll probably need to take some time to work through that in order to understand it. And then there's another idea of discounting a note. And, I think I have one here. I think I have a note in my pocket. Let's just see. I do. I have a dollar bill. This is a dollar bill. And it says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. This piece of paper right here is worth nothing unless somebody else believes it's worth something. So if I go to the vending machine and I have a couple of these things and I put them in the vending machine, it'll give me food or drink, depending on what I want, right? But it's also true that people can write their own notes at times, where someone could give you a note which would be worth a certain amount of money, and you could then have it basically as permission to use a certain amount of money. They will say, all right, I'm going to give you $5,000, and then you give them a note to say, I owe you $5,000. And then in the future, you pay back the $5,000, and then the note is done, right? Well, this happens all the time when people buy something using the idea of no payments for 60 days or 90 days or a year or whatever. They have to sign a note which says, I promise to pay this, but they don't pay it because it's no payments for a certain amount of time. Well, how does that work? Well, what the place where you buy the item, they take that note and they sell it to another company, and that company then becomes responsible to get that payment from you. Now, as we've talked about, the company that originally sold you the item, some of that price that they have in there is just profit, and they're getting their profits out of that thing. Well, they're going to take some of that money, and they're going to allow that finance company to get that money. And then the finance company gets that money, and then they take care of all the details of you paying without actually paying right away, but paying later. And then they can take that note and they can sell it to somebody else. And then the money will go to them later for a cut of that money, which the finance company got. So you can have a long chain of people that have a note. But the fact of the matter is, you're actually, the customer is actually paying more for the item when they use that 0% interest, no payments for 60 days idea. That money actually has to go to that finance company. But it can be a way for a business to generate more business, because they say, I'm going to give you the option of not paying for this thing and yet having it. If you sign and you go through a credit check and all this other stuff, then they will say, okay, you pay later. So the idea of having a note and then having a discounted note is a way for a finance company, which in our textbook is more likely called a bank. And then we have something called the bank discount. And then we have something called proceeds. And it's all vocabulary and things you'll need to learn. All right. So those are just some of the things that are happening this week. It's kind of a big deal. If you want to understand more about money and where money comes from and how it works and things like Bitcoin and all that other weird stuff, feel free to use Google and take a look at some of that. Or, I mean, you could take economics with David Reed at Western, and he'll tell you all you need to know about that. But what we're caring about is the mathematical process by which this all happens, right? So that you would have an idea of what is the math in terms of percents and time and how that creates a loan for simple interest, or a discounted note. If it's given to a bank over a certain period of time, then they get some of that money. Again, I've got videos out there about that. It would be good for you to also look at the textbook, see what the textbook has to say. And best wishes for you on this. And please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll definitely want to help you on this. All right. Have a good week.